want to say hi to everyone participating in Bridging Divides El Dorado. At our kickoff convening on September 29th, we have people from sectors across El Dorado County, from public safety, from the healthcare community, from education, from government, from faith-based organizations. We even have young student leaders, future leaders in our community coming together to see if we can overcome or at least better live with the things that divide us, the things that prevent us from doing our work well, and the things that, well, often just make us feel miserable. I want to introduce all of you to Amanda Ripley, who I've asked to share a few insights and some encouragement about our efforts. Amanda has spent much of her career studying and writing about conflict around the world. She's written for Time Magazine, The Atlantic, The Washington Post, among other publications. In her most recent book, the one that really grabbed my attention and got me thinking differently and more hopefully, is High Conflict: Why We Get Trapped and How We Get Out. I recently interviewed her for about the culture wars in education for my podcast, Courageous Conversations about Our Schools. And I told her about what we were doing in El Dorado County, and she offered to share some thoughts with all of us. Amanda, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So I'd love to hear your thoughts about how and whether a community like ours, it's very diverse politically and geographically, whether a community like ours can come together and bridge the divides that are making life miserable and preventing us from doing our work well.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've learned in studying conflict and following people who have been really stuck in toxic conflict and moved into healthy conflict, whether they're former gang leaders or politicians or activists or even, guerrilla members in Colombia, there are some patterns. And one of the things that gets us into trouble often as humans in conflict is a false binary where there's an us and a them, and we sort large groups of people into these two categories. And for lots of evolutionary reasons and also some current cultural and economic reasons, when we do that, we tend to make a lot of mistakes about ourselves, the problem, or the other side, right? So that binary, Republican versus Democrat, black versus white, good versus evil, is almost always false. In fact, if you look at, just take politics, right? In studies of the American voter, they find that you really can't distill Americans into two groups. If you have to, if you really force the issue, you can get it down to about 7 groups, politically speaking. The furthest to the right, there's about 6% of the population that would be considered, quite actively engaged, very conservative, and furthest to the left, quite actively engaged, progressive, leftist activists, right? But that's only 14% of the population is on those extremes, right? But we start to think that everybody on the other side is an extremist because of the way we've designed social media and the news and politics. So, anything you can do to scramble up the groups and see people for the complicated humans they are, you should do within reason, right? There's a psychological term known as splitting, which describes the way people cope with difficulty, stress, anxiety by breaking everything into all or nothing, good versus evil, absolute categories. And that's the thing we're trying to avoid, right? Because you will make a lot of mistakes. I've made them, right? When you start splitting the world this way, and when you put thousands of or even millions of people into one category, people you really don't know their hearts and minds. So even though you're going to continue to disagree about big important things, as well you should, it is helpful to get to know the complexity within the group, if that makes sense.
And through all your decades of studying and writing about conflict, you come away from that work being encouraged that groups can depolarize, can bridge their divides. Is it possible? And have you seen it happen?
Absolutely. I mean, I've seen it in front of my face, like again and again. So I didn't always used to be that optimistic. I'm generally not, one of these super kumbaya people, and which is one of the strangest things about talking about this book and this research, is that I'm sometimes categorized, right, as being all about like harmony and bipartisan unity, and that's not actually what I mean to be communicating. What I have seen again and again in rooms that I've been in reporting are people who walk in with a huge amount of misconceptions about themselves, the other side, or the problem, and leave with more curiosity, more humor, more understanding, and still profound disagreement about certain things. So in every deep, divisive conflict, there are real things that we need to fight about, right? And then there are things that we fight about endlessly that are not about the real thing, right? We have a lot of the wrong fights with the wrong people at the wrong time in periods of high conflict like this. And the obvious example is in a high conflict divorce, right? Which is when about a quarter of American divorces could be called high conflict, where a couple is really locked in dysfunctional, perpetual cycles of blame for years in the court system, right? And what you see there is that everyone suffers, and who suffers the most, right? Who suffers the most is always kids in high conflict. So what you're trying to do is find a way to rehumanize each other just enough so you can communicate and figure out what is the fight we really need to have, so we can stop, just crushing each other's souls and humanity with the fights that are actually unnecessary.
Amanda, thank you so much. Any final words of encouragement for the people in El Dorado County in Northern California?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're trying to do is what all Americans need to do. It is the only way we are going to get out of this and preserve some peace of mind in our own heads, right? There's a lot we can't control. We can't control politicians. We can't control pundits, right? We can't control social media platforms right now. But, we can influence those things over time. In the meantime, we have got to get to know one another under certain conditions and have relationships so that we can diffuse and de-escalate conflict when needed, so that we don't have more political violence, and that we can understand what we actually disagree about so we can have the right fight. It is very difficult to do because high conflict is really magnetic. So I would applaud you for trying and tell you that, don't let anyone tell you that this is Pollyanna, because in this country, we need conflict. We need anger, right? We need to push each other. We have a very diverse democracy, but we need also to have relationship, to have decency, to have humanity, or we can't sustain it, right? We need guardrails, the kind that politics and social media and many news outlets don't currently have, so that we don't get bewitched by high conflict and end up destroying the things we care most about. So I commend you, and I'm so eager to hear how it goes.
Well, Amanda, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and words of encouragement with the people here in this county. We will definitely keep you posted. So thanks very much, and so long for now.
Thank you, Ken. Take care.